Well, hello, everybody, and welcome. Welcome. Happy Thursday. All right. I want to welcome you to Live with Leslie, and I've got a great show lined up for you today, especially if you are a health professional and you're really wanting to help your clients to catapult their brain health. You are definitely in the right place today because today we'll be chatting with Dr. Lexi Watson. And Dr. Lexi is from Oakley Wellness, and she's also a doctor of pharmacy, a certified IFM practitioner, and she's also certified in Recode 2.0. So she's a Recode 2.0 practitioner, which we'll be talking a little bit more about here shortly. And today, Dr. Lexi is going to be sharing her top 2 strategies to help banish the brain fog, optimize brain health, and ultimately prevent Alzheimer's disease, which is a pretty big deal. So again, welcome everyone to Live with Leslie. And for those of you that don't know me, I'm Leslie Beitel, practice growth expert and mentor for health professionals in private practice. And I help my clients to attract more right fit clients, sell more programs, and ultimately grow a profitable practice that they love while integrating multiple streams of income. So, all right. Well, Lexi, I'm so happy to have you here with me today. What a delight talking about one of my favorite topics, and that is brain health. So, let's kick things off. I always love to know the backstory. I know you're a doctor of pharmacy. You've got amazing training under your belt. Can you tell us a little bit about your journey and how you ended up where you are today?
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for having me on. I'm really excited to be here. So yeah, like my story. So I always grew up like wanting to help people, right? Started off like with me wanting to go to medical school. The blood thing, not for me. Not my thing. So
Right, right.
turns out I was one of those weirdos in high school. If you're a fellow weirdo, love you guys. I'm out there with you, but I loved chemistry in high school. So
Wow. There
pairing,
are people out there that loved it. I
right,
can't say I
right.
was one of those people. I was a bio person.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny because I absolutely hated biology in high school, but now it's part of what I do. But anyway, uh,
Right.
but pairing, wanting to help people with chemistry, I found pharmacy. And so that is where wanting to go to pharmacy school really began. And then during pharmacy school, I had always struggled with ADHD, brain fog, and whatnot. And so I discovered in pharmacy school, compounding pharmacy, how personalized that is. And I actually shadowed a compounding pharmacist who also practiced functional medicine. And so that's how I found functional medicine. And I was like, this is a game changer because we're not just giving people medicine to cover up symptoms of what's going on. We're diving way deeper than that, and we're really getting to the root cause, and people are able to come off of medications. They're feeling better than they've had in years. And it was absolutely life-changing, career-changing, all of the above. So then with I started implementing my own or experimenting on myself, if you will, as I was training and whatnot. And I was able to come off of my own medication, and I've been off of it for 5 years now, I think.
Wow.
Totally managed ADHD without any medication. But at the same time, and this is kind of where I get into what Recode is. My grandmother was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and
Okay.
so my family, having also kind of dived headfirst into functional medicine with me, which was really exciting. That doesn't always happen. But we were looking around for what can you do for Alzheimer's, and
Mhm.
we discovered Dr. Dale Bredesen and his work. And he has devoted the last 20 plus years to research on what causes Alzheimer's, what can you do about it. And they, or him and his team, have identified over 36 different factors that can contribute to cognitive decline, Alzheimer's, the different dementias, and the like. And they have they've developed different ways that you can address those different factors. And
Mhm.
that together, they've called the RECODE program, or Reversing Cognitive Decline program.
Okay.
So that is what RECODE is this entire program where it's personalized to each individual, where we figure out what potential factors either contributing to cognitive decline or making you at risk for cognitive decline, and creating a personalized root cause approach for your individual contributors.
Okay. So interesting.
So we found that, read up on it, and I was like, this is amazing,
Yeah.
and loved it so much that I decided to go ahead and do their certification. So that's part of what I do now, is between my functional medicine training and the RECODE training, which very much intertwine and complement each other. I'm able to help people with brain fog, concentration issues, even the fear of Alzheimer's, honestly, really get to the root cause of what's going on in their bodies, and attain that mental clarity they've been looking for, completely banish the brain fog, and prevent and potentially even reverse Alzheimer's as well.
Wow. That is incredible. So I know we were just talking about the IFM certification before we hit the live button. That in of itself is huge. That certification is absolutely amazing. And then we add this recode. How long did it take you to do the recode certification?
Was about 5 to 6 months.
Okay. So yeah, like you got a lot of training, not to mention doctor of pharmacy. So a lot of education and training under your belt. So then in your private practice, Oakley Wellness, you specialize in brain health, right? And it sounds like not only, helping people with cognitive decline, but also some of those other brain issues, brain fog, maybe due to gut issues or whatever the case, or maybe hormonal imbalance, right?
Absolutely.
Um, do you also help people with, your particular diagnosis?
For ADHD.
ADHD?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I've worked with people with ADHD, depression, anxiety, um,
Okay.
pretty much anything having to do with the brain. I'm here.
So good. And is there a root cause for ADHD? I'm
Yeah,
kind of off the cuff question.
I've actually found where most of the time, each of these individual diagnoses tend to have very similar root causes, and
Okay.
they just manifest as different things in different people, depending on how your particular body reacts to your environment. So I tend to find the same or general root causes for most people, which is very interesting.
Oh, so these root causes are somewhat similar. It just manifests perhaps in a different way. Okay. So another kind of off the cuff question. Do you often find that the underlying root cause is like mold exposure and environmental toxins? I would assume that's pretty common as well.
It's very common. And
Yeah.
I would say more and more common these days,
Yeah.
which it, on the one hand, is awful, but on the
Yeah.
other hand, since we're finding it more, we know what's going on. So there's something that we can do about it.
Right, right. It's not easy to fix, right? It is definitely not easy to, if you have mold in your home, it can be pretty rough, but at least you have a name for it.
Absolutely. And you're not going, continuing on not knowing what's going on. Um,
Right,
and sometimes that person is just overly sensitive. So the mold itself might not be as huge of an issue to clean up and
right.
take care of. And then other times I have had people who have needed to move.
Yeah.
Uh, but they've said, no, my health is worth it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. It can be a rough journey. I'd love to hear from our audience in terms of, because interestingly, more and more of even my clients, my practitioner clients, tell me that they themselves are struggling with mold toxicity. And it's really challenging because it does affect the brain. So I'd
yes,
love to hear from our audience, if you yourself are looking for this in your private practice, which again, more and more practitioners are, it's really great because it often is a root cause of, gut issues, brain issues can really play havoc with a lot of our body systems.
and I'll be completely honest, like when I first started practicing, this was one of those things that I kind of pushed to the back burner. And as I've
Ah,
been practicing
yeah,
longer and longer, I find this is something I look for first off,
right.
very uh, so, but it makes sense. I just want to plug this in there real quick.
Yeah.
Bodies tend, when we have an overload of toxins and we can't get rid of them, we store them in fatty tissues. Well, the brain is a fatty tissue. So
Oh, right.
that overload of toxins is going to affect our brain.
Oh, wow. I didn't even really think of that. I always think of it, storing in the gut, yeah, that makes perfect sense, which is going to exacerbate the whole problem.
Mhm.
Yeah, so interesting. So let's talk a little bit about brain fog because again, as we've been saying, it's just such a common symptom. Um, and clearly it's not normal. A lot of people try to tend to, normalize it like, oh, I'm just getting older, getting more forgetful. Um, Tell us a little bit about, what is it? Like, first of all, I guess that's a great place to start. What is brain fog? How would you define it?
That's a great question. And I do want to absolutely echo your statement that brain fog is not normal. While it's very common, it is not normal. I think
Mhm.
I tend to find that people often think that, or we kind of just assume that common and normal mean the same thing, and they don't. Uh,
Mhm.
but as far as diving deeper into what brain fog is, because a lot of people say, well, it feels like there's a fog over my brain. I'm like, okay, well, that's great, but like, what exactly are you struggling with? So
Yeah.
some of the things that I see are, or that you could, say fall underneath the brain fog umbrella would definitely be confusion, difficulty making simple decisions, making plans or problem solving. A big one is forgetfulness or saying that you
Mhm.
have poor memory,
Yep.
that inability to focus,
Yep. Absolutely.
even feelings of discouragement, loss of motivation,
Mm.
difficulty learning new things. That's a big
Okay.
one. Um,
When I was in a moldy house,
yeah.
I struggled with like I just couldn't think of the word,
Yes. Yes.
right? It was like, okay, like, and it just, okay, it's on the tip of my tongue, but it's like I can't find it,
Yes.
right? It's a terrible feeling.
It is.
It's very uncomfortable. And yeah,
And
it's
having
not good. It is
that,
not good when you're in it and you're like, oh, what is the word? I mean, every now, like, how do you define, like, okay, so sometimes you just can't think of the word,
right.
right? When does that turn into a problem?
That's a great question. I would say if it, I believe a lot of your audience uses like symptom questionnaires and whatnot.
Yes.
So in those, we usually say, does this happen to you frequently?
Hmm.
Kind of thing. So I would say, if it starts happening more frequently,
Hmm.
that becomes a red flag. But
Okay.
if it happens to you occasionally, that's going to happen,
Yeah.
especially as we live through life because we don't live in a bubble,
Right.
right? So
True.
things are going to happen. And most of the time, your body can then compensate for those things. But when it starts to not be able to compensate and function normally, that's when things like word finding tend to become a repeating issue.
Yeah.
Uh, I've even seen where some of my clients say that, they've started not really remembering their coworkers or coworkers' families like they used to,
Okay.
the people that they should know, uh,
Right.
walking into the next room and not knowing why you walked in.
Oh, that's a common one.
Yeah.
Right. So brain fog versus Alzheimer's.
So brain fog, I would say I would say it is a very common symptom and precursor of cognitive decline in Alzheimer's.
Okay.
So, if you're experiencing those things, doesn't mean you have Alzheimer's, doesn't mean you're going to get Alzheimer's.
Yeah.
I would definitely say that it increases your risk. And
Okay.
so we want to ensure. Now, I will say, if you or your clients have these symptoms, this is a good time to start paying attention, because this is a warning sign that something is not right. And the
Hmm.
time to act is now, not later when you actually have a diagnosis of Alzheimer's. Uh,
Unfortunately, I mean, I couldn't agree with you more. Like, and I think for the most part, the group of people we have on our call today, like we get that. We're into prevention, but it's so challenging. The normal person, let's be honest, a lot of times they wait until there's a big problem before
they
they do anything, right? Which is so frustrating. It's got to be so frustrating for someone like yourself.
It is. And I will say that has probably been my biggest struggle
Yeah.
business wise is,
That urgency, creating urgency.
absolutely. So I think one thing that has helped me understand this better is that Alzheimer's is actually stage 4 cognitive decline. So you can
Okay.
think of things like the stages
Okay.
of cancer or whatnot. Once that you get diagnosed with Alzheimer's, that the biological processes have been going on for an average of 20 years.
Whoa. Okay.
Yeah.
And
So
can you get like a scan?
you
You know what
can.
I mean? Like, can you get a scan to see if it started? Like if I'm sitting here kind of worried right now, could I go get a scan?
Yeah, so you can. You
It's probably really expensive, right?
um,
Uh-huh.
and especially because for prevention efforts, insurance may or may not cover it.
Okay.
But you can get an MRI with
Right. I did that actually when so, and I think my insurance paid, but it was because I was in a moldy home. And I remember telling my doctor, like, it's really weird. Like, the word's on the tip of my tongue, but I can't find it. And I really, really pushed the point. Like, and
good.
he's like, all right, well, let's just get you a scan. Kind of scared the daylights out of me, to be honest. Like, he said, early onset Alzheimer's. I'm like, oh my God. I don't think I have that, but anyways, a little scary, but it was fine, totally fine. So I just wonder if that is a common, like, do people do that? Although you're saying you probably have to pay out of pocket unless you're symptomatic, maybe they
And
would
it depends
cover it.
on what your doctor puts in as the ICD
Okay,
codes, to maybe get that covered, like that. But that's not something that I can do for my
right.
patients, pharmacist, right? But
Got it.
absolutely, you can do that. Um, and as far as early onset Alzheimer's, I think it's very interesting because normally when we see that, there is a toxic component.
Yeah. When the person's really young. Yeah, that makes sense.
It's fascinating. But
I mean,
yes,
'cause not a lot of people get that true early onset Alzheimer's, right? Like I would imagine that's pretty rare.
it is definitely a more or a less common, excuse me, form of Alzheimer's for
Yeah.
sure.
Thank God,
Oh,
right?
I know.
Because that would be terrible.
It is increasing, unfortunately.
Is it?
Yeah. So
Oh,
I believe that the average person diagnosed with Alzheimer's right now, or at least a few years ago, was 49, not 60.
mhm. Oh, okay.
So it is becoming more common, but it is, again, there's so much that you can do, and that's part of what I want to come on here and share with everybody today, because
Yeah.
this is not to scare people. It's not
Right.
for your patients. It's not to scare you for your patients or yourself. And this is more about, understanding what's going on. Um, and like you were talking about brain imaging, there's many, many other tests that you can do to help determine your risk. And
Okay. Tell us
um,
about those.
yeah, so part of that comes from all those different causes of Alzheimer's and cognitive decline that
Okay.
I mentioned that Dr. Bredesen has discovered, over 36
Right.
different things, right? So these are some of the different things that show us what's going on. So while the brain imaging can be really helpful to determine if it's actually affecting the structure of your brain at this point, then it doesn't really tell you why, though. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? So
Okay.
these are tests, and these are usually what I see start causing brain dysfunction, the brain fog, and then if left unattended, can develop into that cognitive decline and Alzheimer's. So, um, but I also, before I really dive into that list, like I want to stress, is I'm sure your audience already knows, it will be different for each person. Not every
Right.
person is going to have all of these things. They may, one person may have two, another person may have 10, and they could be completely different.
Okay.
Um, so, uh, yeah, let's just dive in.
Yeah, let's
So,
do it.
definitely looking at blood sugar imbalance, insulin resistance, diabetes, that whole
Okay.
segue, or not segue.
That whole, I mean, variable, right? Like,
Yes, absolutely. And building on to cardiometabolic health, your cholesterol, is it, we don't want too much, we don't want too little. We want it to
mhm,
not be small, dense, and sticky. We want it to be this large, fluffy, protective stuff,
right.
because that's what we're made out of, right? We got to have it. Um,
Yes.
Too many refined carbs, which plays into that insulin resistance.
Mm,
Want to make sure that the brain is using the fuel we give it optimally, right?
okay.
Food sensitivities and gut disruption.
Mm,
The gut is our really our first interaction with the world, right?
mhm,
Making sure that what's coming into the gut, and then all the signals that go from the gut to the brain about our environment. Are we safe? Are we not? All of those play a factor into the your brain health. And
okay.
um, you know gut dysbiosis, the gut bugs they not only make um, some of your nutrients and whatnot, they make certain signaling molecules that go to your brain. um, Inflammation in general, I mean, a lot of the things we've already mentioned, if they're off, they will create inflammation in the body. um, I like to think of it like your brain is a country, and this analogy came from Dr. Bredesen, but if you are waging war, which is what your inflammatory attack is, right? You
Right.
can't be building infrastructure at the same time.
Mm,
So you can't be building these different connections between your brain cells if you're waging war the whole time. So kind of finding that balance. I mean, super simple technology overload. That's a big one.
okay. Yeah,
Nutrient.
that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Nutrient imbalances, sleep deprivation, um, physical activity, overtraining versus being completely sedentary. There's
Yeah.
that little happy ground, right? And then we get into hormones, early
Mm,
menopause, and other hormone imbalances like your cortisol and stress levels, your thyroid, your other reproductive hormones. I want to touch on estrogen for a minute, but
okay.
estrogen is part of the, I guess, category of neurotropic factors, which are
Okay.
that encourage those connections between your brain cells and new brain cells being formed and that kind of thing. And when we have low levels of estrogen, especially during menopause when they drop off very quickly,
Mhm.
that then our brain loses those signals. And so that's actually a big reason or a big part of why women are at a higher risk for Alzheimer's than men.
Oh, so it's it's potentially the estrogen drop. Oh,
Absolutely.
interesting. So another way to look at it maybe is estrogen replacement is helpful for the brain.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Especially in age
fascinating.
transition. You don't want to stay on hormone replacement forever.
Right.
Yeah, definitely easing the transition so you don't have that sharp
Oh,
decline.
I see. Okay, so just to kind of cushion.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
And then different infections, like, I mean, it could be bacterial, but it could also be viral, yeast,
Mm,
parasite,
mm.
uh, any of that. Um, like we talked about the toxins, mold,
Yeah.
chemicals, other chemicals, exposures, uh,
Mhm.
head injuries. So
Oh, right.
if you were in a motor vehicle accident, maybe someone played sports, um, different things like that.
Mhm.
I would be a terrible pharmacist if I did not mention medications. um,
Right. Medications, like, yeah, which ones?
the top three offenders are antihistamines. So those are things like those are your allergy medications. So
Okay. The newer ones, like, Claritin. Oh, interesting. Okay.
not quite as bad as like Benadryl,
Okay.
but they still do have an effect on the brain. So Claritin, Xyzal,
Yep.
Tech, and Allegra are your big.
Okay. I did not know that. Okay. Yeah. I just started taking
Yeah. Well,
allergy medicine.
and I want to, I always have to say,
Uh-huh.
especially like to the people that I work with,
Mhm.
but and this is like the people that I work with at my day job, right?
Yes.
I still do work in pharmacy, but drugs are not bad. They're there
It's
for
a
you.
tool, right?
It's a tool. It just doesn't need to be your only tool. And
Okay.
it would be best if they were used um, just as needed. So
Right.
during the changing season, absolutely. If you need one, you need one. That's totally fine.
Yeah.
You can get away with using a more natural option like quercetin, go for it.
Okay.
But my biggest concern that I see is when I see people that take antihistamines year round or
Yes.
take Benadryl every night to sleep.
Oh,
Yeah. So
okay.
I see that one a lot actually.
Okay. Hmm.
Number
Fascinating.
three.
Yeah, I guess I can yeah, people that have it doesn't seem like a good idea to me, but I wouldn't be that person. But anyway, I know that there's probably lots of people out there that can go to, the only way they can go to sleep, they think, is if they take Benadryl. Interesting.
Yeah. Fun
Okay.
fact, my husband used to be one of those people. And I said,
Oh, interesting. Okay. So you had to wean them off.
yes, I did. Okay, number two worst offending medication is the class called statins and
Oh boy.
cholesterol.
Okay.
And part of what they do and how they work, yes, they block cholesterol production and or LDL production, and that's actually helps with lowering inflammation. But
Mhm.
at the same time, it also blocks your body's production of coenzyme Q10.
Yes.
Is an absolutely vital part in making energy. And your brain is one of the top energy users of the body. So if
Mm.
you not have that energy going to your brain, then it's going to adversely affect your memory. And so statins
Wow.
are, again, sometimes we really do need them on board short term to
Mhm.
normalize levels. But long term, that is a big risk factor.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And then number three are acid blockers. And
Oh, huh.
Yeah. So the biggest offenders are the PPIs, or the proton pump inhibitors, and that's like your Prilosec and your Nexium and that kind
Hmm.
of thing. But also the H2 blockers like famotidine, and even just like your Tums antacids, if taken consistently, because your body or your digestive system needs to have certain pHs to break down your food properly, to absorb certain nutrients properly. And so when you don't have those, because all of those acid blockers raise the pH of your stomach, uh,
Hmm.
all of those nutrients that you need to absorb in a very acidic environment, you don't get those. And not to mention, it helps create an environment for all these bugs to grow where they're not supposed to and whatnot. It's a whole slippery slope.
Oh, and those are so common.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
And again, here's my pharmacy hat,
Yes.
but they're very helpful for if you really have an issue.
Yeah.
But in the guidelines, you're only supposed to use them for 8 weeks.
8 weeks. Okay.
And yeah,
Not like not 80 years or oh
right. Right, right. So,
my God.
and that's what I see so commonly is, they had a legitimate issue
Yeah.
and they just never came off of it. And 5 years
Yeah.
later, they're still taking it.
Yeah. Oh
Yeah.
yeah. My dad, endless, and there's no getting him off it. And the thing is that, it's over the counter now. So, so that's something. And then I don't know, just the medical community, if I were to kind of lump them all together, I don't
Yeah.
really see a big problem. It's like, okay, got heartburn, take it, right?
Yeah.
I always think like with any medication, there's pros and cons. It's never just it's never free, right? Nothing's ever free like that. There are going to be some drawbacks. So
Absolutely.
that's interesting. Okay, so those are like the top three offenders in terms of medications, which is fascinating.
And two
Um,
out of the three of those are over the counter.
exactly. Okay. Yeah, that's a really big problem. So, all right. So where do you begin? I guess because there's like we've talked about so many causes of brain dysfunction and brain fog. There's so many things. So, like when you get a new patient or new client, where do you even start?
That is a great question. So, yes, that list can be very daunting, but I do
Mhm.
try to make it more encouraging because that just means there's so much that you can do. It's
Okay,
awesome.
that's good. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and some of them can be intuitive, like, maybe you're eating too many potato chips, too many carbs, that kind of thing.
Okay.
But, some of them are not super apparent, which is why I typically do testing with my clients. But
Mhm.
absolutely every single time I start in the gut.
Okay. Hmm.
So first we have to fix the gut. And that's because, like I said before, it's our body's first interaction with our environment. 70% of the immune system is in the gut. So it's our first line defense. It's what, tells us what's coming in, what's staying out. It makes several nutrients and different brain chemicals. About 90% of your serotonin is made in your gut. um, and sends several different kinds of messengers to the brain and lets us know whether we are safe or in danger.
Mhm.
And so there's three major areas where it can be disrupted: the digestion, the gut wall, and the microbiome.
Okay.
um, a lot of the causes of that are many of the same things: stress, food sensitivities, infection, inflammation,
Mm.
medications, etc. um, and I believe you've interviewed experts on this as well. So I'll just kind of fly by
Okay.
through these tips real quick. But my top tips for actually doing that are, with my clients, are identifying and removing potential triggers. So understanding what's causing it, like
Okay.
are they taking an acid blocker and we need to taper them off? Have they been eating gluten and need to take that out for a while at least?
Okay.
That kind of thing. We need to aid digestion. whether it's with enzymes, acid at meals, fiber, whatnot. Um,
Okay.
Pump the gut with healing nutrients. I love to use food as medicine, so try to, push that. Like, I need you to eat.
Mhm.
Sometimes that's an issue. Uh,
I believe it.
yeah. And then if we need it, targeted supplements.
Okay.
Um, and then rebalancing the microbiome. That's a big one. Uh,
Okay.
and you can also do that with food and supplements as well. So, going back to the country analogy, fixing the gut allows your first defense of your country to do its job effectively so that the rest of the body doesn't have to work as hard, and your brain can function as it's needing to,
Mhm.
trying to be on the defense all the time.
So
So
interesting. So gut, first place to start.
every time, every
Okay.
time.
And then once the gut has been addressed, then what?
Then we need to make sure that the body is insulin sensitive. Uh,
Okay.
so we really want to, of course, calm things down with the gut, make sure that, inflammation from that source is no longer an issue.
Mhm.
Uh, and number two, we need to make sure that the brain is utilizing its fuel properly.
Okay.
So if the brain or the body is insulin resistant, then your brain is not going to be able to use the glucose or
Mhm.
any of the fuel that you give it. And you're still going to feel that brain foggy feeling,
Okay.
still have concentration and memory issues and that kind of thing. So, how we do that,
Yes.
we start to reteach the body to use fuel properly. And
Okay.
we do that by increasing your natural ketones and lowering excess glucose. So this
Mhm.
basically gives your insulin signaling system a break and kind of reset itself.
Okay. So do you put people in ketosis?
I do. I do.
Okay.
So,
Interesting.
I try to measure that the ketones. It depends on the person and their
Mhm.
situation, whether we actually get into full blown ketosis or we're just aiming for more of a mild ketosis.
Okay.
I usually try and have them measure their ketones. Uh,
Okay. Through a urine strip?
I usually do blood.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Mhm. And actually, the one I usually use is by Keto Mojo, and it actually measures both glucose and ketones. So we
Okay, great.
make sure that their glucose is somewhat normalized
Okay.
before we start targeting the ketones, and that
And do
way,
you use the CGM?
I love using
Yeah.
CGM. It totally depends on the person's budget, whether or not.
Okay. Whether or not they can. I mean, I know our audience here, you guys have heard me talk about what an eye opener that experience has been. Holy moly.
Yes.
Yeah. It changes everything. Especially for a data-driven person, like I'm sure all of us are on
ab-
this call.
Absolutely.
It was an eye opener.
It's fascinating. I mean, even at the pharmacy, my patients that switch from a finger stick to a CGM, they're like, "What?"
Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you try to keep so if the person is willing and has the budget, do you try to keep them under a certain threshold?
Yes. So it totally depend. Well, it also depends on where they're at. If
Okay.
they have diabetes or like really bad insulin sensitivity,
Mhm.
I'm going to try and bring that down gradually so that they
Okay.
don't, right?
Okay.
So ideally, fasting, I try to keep them below 90, between
Okay.
75 and 90,
Yep.
ideally. And then post meal, I'm trying not to let them spike above like 150-ish.
Okay. Yeah. That 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 sounds about where I it's not easy to do.
It's not. It's not. It kind of creates a game.
It
So
does. Like, yeah, I can see that. I really can.
yeah. So the easiest way to start reteaching your body to use your fuel properly, it's a three-pronged approach.
Okay.
What's your food, right? Whole food, increase protein and healthy fats, decreasing the simple and refined carbs,
Okay.
and then starting to implement fasting, the intermittent fasting.
Okay.
Some people like to dive into 24-hour fast. I start out with 12 hours of fasting.
Okay.
It in it also depends on their genetics, whether I try to push that farther or not.
Okay.
ApoE4 carriers tend to do better with a 14 to 16-hour fast.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
And then third prong of that is exercise. So
Ah,
food, fasting, and exercise, you can usually pretty easily move yourself into at least a mild ketosis.
okay. Do you use what is that product? Pri- uh, why
Pro,
can't I think? Prylon?
Prolon,
Prolon. Yes.
I have,
Do you use that in your
but
practice?
I don't use Prolon at this time, but I do. I'm really impressed with their results. So
They've
I
got some good data.
would not be
Yeah.
surprised if I brought that on later for sure.
Yeah, yeah. I actually have talked with practitioners who deal with people with a variety of metabolic issues, and they just say they get the best results. So I've been tempted to try that, but I guess that's another conversation, right?
I'll
Just another tool potentially,
ask
right? I think you have to have a really motivated patient to
you
do that,
to do a full fast like that. Yes, yes, very motivated. But I mean, what a way to reset the brain. Ab-
right?
ab-
Okay. Yeah.
So
It's super. Yeah, they've got some interesting data. So, okay, so once the gut has been addressed, then we move into basically the like the blood sugar, right? Kind of resetting the blood sugar, the metabolism,
one
help.
more thing on
Yeah,
that.
go ahead.
The being in ketosis and whatnot, not necessarily forever. That is until we reestablish insulin sensitivity, and
Okay.
testing your fasting insulin, glucose, A1C, that kind of thing.
Okay.
Um, and then you can start reincorporating some more of the starchy or carbohydrates and that kind of thing.
Okay.
Um, and then you just kind of reassess how it affects you. And some
Mhm.
people do better staying in ketosis more often, and some do
Okay.
better. We're kind of coming in and out, and that's totally fine. But I just wanted to throw that out there.
Okay.
It's not
Yeah,
for
it's not like a forever thing. Yeah. Well, I think that's a really, really important point. Because it's really not sustainable.
no, not for most
And
people.
yeah, and I, anecdotally, I've heard, people really challenged by trying to stay in ketosis, and then things just get messed up. To be super clinical, things get messed up, right?
Right, exactly.
Bottom line. All right. Is there anything else that you can do that we haven't touched on that you want to share?
Yeah. So actually, I did. Well, Dr. Bredesen and his team, they came up with the Bredesen 7, which is like,
Okay.
it's a whole lifestyle approach. And that's basically what I created or developed my Oakley method around. So it's really a whole lifestyle thing. So you
Okay.
take the two things that we talked about today, fixing the gut and making sure that we're insulin sensitive. And we basically create a long-term lifestyle that is fueling for the brain and all preventative of cognitive decline. Um, so it incorporates the nutrition, the sleep, the stress management,
Okay.
the reduction in toxins, the optimization of any supplements or anything like that. It looks at mindset. It looks at um, brain training and exercise. I don't know if I said
Okay.
this already, but it's a whole lifestyle. So each component is designed to increase optimal function of the brain, of course, while also increasing neuroplasticity, which is that ability for the brain to form and reorganize connections. And it can be a lot. So that's why I do what I do. I
Yeah.
help coach and help people navigate all of those moving parts. But yeah, it's a whole lifestyle approach for sure. And then getting any of the other tests of the factors that we talked about earlier, that could also be a next step approach.
Okay. I love that. So, for our audience today, where can they find out more information? Where should
Yeah.
we send them?
So I do have a free guide if you guys are interested in that. It helps walk you through these two vital steps that we talked about today. I also have a blog. You can check that out. That's
Okay.
oakley.com. And Leslie will have all that information for
Yeah.
you.
So
Um,
that's Oakley Wellness, right? Oakley-wellness.com. Guys, just FYI, Oakley and then
like the
wellness.
sunglasses.
Say that again.
Like the sunglasses.
Yes. Okay. Love that. Yep. Oakley-wellness.com. What a great name. How did you come up with that name?
So it actually stands for optimal aging, knowledge, longevity, empowered by you.
Okay.
Um,
I love
but
that. I
I've
didn't know
also,
that about you. So cool.
I've also loved nature and trees, and so
Yeah.
in the healing aspect of nature with the brain and the acronym is where Oakley Wellness comes.
Okay. Oh, and I love oak trees. Whenever I see an oak tree, I'm like, oh my God, there's an oak tree.
So a little plug there. I also graduated from Auburn University, and we had the oak trees that we roll after we win a football game. So
Okay. So fun. Yeah. I love it's a great business name. I love that. So, okay. So, guys, bottom line, go to oakleywellness.com. You can learn more about Dr. Lexi's amazing work, and you can also download, she has a free guide on what is the title of that free guide? I know it's really good because I've seen it.
let me pull that
Um,
up.
it is a really good one. So you can head on over.
It's the top 3 tips to banish the brain fog and regain your mental clarity.
Great.
Wanted to make sure I said that right.
Yep, that's awesome. Okay. Yeah. So I would definitely go there, check it out, grab her guide. I know I've downloaded it myself. I'm on Lexi's email list. This is a really important topic, especially as more and more people are really struggling with optimizing their brain health. And I didn't realize this before, but the getting diagnosed earlier and earlier for Alzheimer's. So that's pretty, I don't know, I would say that's pretty motivating. So either for yourself or as a referral source for your clients, if you don't feel quite ready to take on these clients, definitely give Lexi, drop her a line if you want to refer anyone her way. I mean, I would entrust my parents with Lexi. All right. So definitely recommend her services very much. So, all right, guys, are any final words of wisdom that you want to share before we wrap up?
I just want to say, like, if you guys have any questions, I'm happy to answer questions as well. So yeah, reach out. As far as words of wisdom, test, don't guess.
Yeah. Okay. I love that. Testing can really reveal so very much. So yeah, I would just say, especially when it comes to the gut, like I wouldn't even know where to start without testing.
For sure.
So, yeah, so good. This was fascinating. I hope you guys learned a ton and are, really inspired to take a closer look at this whole brain health category in your own practice and perhaps in your own personal life. Um, I think it's just imperative in this day and age where so many people are struggling. So it's definitely an area where like Lexi said, there's so many root causes and so many tools at your disposal to really help people to move forward and get their brains back, right? So they can function at a high level in society and really live their best lives. So again, visit Dr. Lexi Watson at oakley-wellness.com. and grab her free download and drop her a line. Check out her blog too. It's really, really good. You won't be sorry. All right, guys. So I hope you have an awesome rest of your day, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.